The fire crackles in front of you, casting dancing shadows on the rocks around your feet. You didn't build it to cook or to stay warm, though it does both. No, you built it because something in your bones tells you to. Something ancient. Something older than words or memory. You don't know it yet, but you've just lit humanity's first true defense. Modern streetlights flicker to life outside apartment windows. People walk their dogs, barely noticing the electric glow that keeps darkness at bay. It's so ordinary now. But in the world you're stepping into, the night is not ordinary, it's alive. Every rustle could be a predator. Every shadow might have teeth. If you've ever wondered how your ancestors survived out here, how they kept from being dragged away by the jaws in the night, well, that's what we're about to explore. But before we do, remember to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. Now, sit by this fire. You'll need it. You don't yet have a word for fire, but you know it burns. You've seen lightning strike dry grass, watched flames devour trees in yellow hunger. But now, for the first time, someone in your group has learned how to hold it. They brought a branch from a lightning-struck grove. Now, that flame dances in a ring of stones you helped place. Smoke stings your eyes. But it also carries a new smell, safety. The animals don't come close anymore. Not the saber-toothed cats, not the giant wolves, not the hyenas that once skulked just beyond the clearing. You see their eyes sometimes, still. Glinting in the distance. Watching. But they stay back now. The fire makes them nervous. You don't know why, but you're grateful. And it's not just the light. The smoke throws off their sense of smell. The crackling disrupts their careful steps. The flames promise pain, and pain teaches caution, even to predators. This, you've learned, wild beasts respect fire, even if they don't fear much else. Historians still debate whether early humans created fire themselves or simply learned to carry it. Some think it started with luck, lightning, lava, spontaneous combustion. Others believe humans may have observed and experimented, slowly discovering the secrets of friction, of flint and spark. But what matters to you is simpler: fire is here now. And it means you might live to see another morning. Your group huddles closer to the glow. Some sleep, curled like children beneath hides. Others stay awake, watching the shadows. This is the first patrol. There are no spears yet, no war paint or battle cries. Just quiet vigilance. You know predators don't follow rules. They wait until you're tired. Until your guard drops. So you take turns keeping the fire alive, feeding it twigs, bark, anything dry. It's your heartbeat now. Let it die, and the night swallows you whole. You remember before the fire. The constant fear. You try to sleep in trees or caves, praying nothing found your scent. You couldn't make a sound. Even breathing felt dangerous. Some nights you'd wake to screams. Others, you wouldn't wake at all. But now, with fire, something has changed. You don't just survive the night. You control a piece of it. There's a kind of magic in that. Not the kind with spells and wands, but something deeper. The fire becomes a symbol. A place to gather. To share food. To tell the first stories, even if you don't have words yet. The children draw lines in the dirt with sticks, mimicking the flames. They imitate the crackle with their mouths. And you, without knowing it, you begin to hope. The predators notice too. They prowl the edges of the firelight, frustrated. Hungry. Some grow bold and approach, circling close enough that their growls mix with the hiss of flames. But they don't dare cross the boundary. You meet their eyes sometimes. And for the first time, they blink first. Fire gives you more than protection. It gives you time. Time to think, to plan. You don't have to run every day now. You start to experiment. Stones crack in fire and form sharp edges. Meat cooks and becomes easier to chew. Bones harden in flame. Each discovery starts here, around the fire. But it's not perfect. A storm comes, and the fire dies. You panic. You run. That night, the beasts return. You lose someone. A child, perhaps. Or a sister. You grieve, but you also learn. You must keep the fire alive, no matter what. Rain, wind, hunger, none of it matters more than flame. So you try again. And again. Eventually, someone learns how to strike flint against stone. The spark catches. Fire returns. This time, it's yours, not borrowed from the sky, but made by your hands. You are no longer at the mercy of nature. You've begun to master it. This is the beginning of a new chapter in human survival. With fire, you have light, warmth, protection, and power. It is your first wall against the wild, your first tool of control. The predators still exist, of course. But they stay back now. Watching. Waiting. And you? You sit tall by the flames, watching right back. You wake up to the soft light of dawn, your body stiff from sleeping on hard earth. But you're alive. Everyone in your group is. The fire has burned low, but the embers are still warm, and that means you made it through the night. Again. But you know fire alone won't always be enough. Some beasts are patient. They'll wait for wind, for rain, for the moment your guard slips. And that's why you've learned to climb. The tree above you groans slightly in the breeze. Its wide branches cradle your sleeping companions like a nest. You shift your weight and glance down at the forest floor below. You've been up here since sunset, nested in a large fig tree with limbs strong enough to hold 6 people. Below, movement rustles through the underbrush, something four-legged. A predator, sniffing the air. You grip the branch tighter. But it doesn't climb. It never does. That's why you chose this tree. Living high isn't comfortable. Your back aches from sleeping on bark. You have to climb down cautiously for water, food, or to relieve yourself. A wrong step could kill you. But up here, you're safe, from lions, wolves, even the rare but terrifying big cats that hunt in silence. They may leap, but they don't follow you into the canopy. This, you've learned, is your edge. You've begun to choose sleeping trees more carefully. Not just any branch will do. You look for height, yes, but also thickness, stability, and easy escape routes in case a storm breaks loose. Some trees lean over rivers or cliffs, creating natural defenses. Others have wide forks for you to nestle in, protected on all sides. You even carry extra vines or twisted roots to secure yourself while you sleep. Not all of your kind lives in trees. Some prefer the cliffs, jagged stone overhangs where even sure-footed predators hesitate to tread. You've visited such places. The wind whistles there, sharp and cold, but the view is wide. You can see danger coming from far away. In one settlement, humans sleep tucked into tiny alcoves halfway up a sheer rock wall. You watched how they scaled the path at dusk, pressing fingers into worn grooves like insects crawling back to their hive. Historians still debate when early humans began using elevation for safety. Some believe our tree-dwelling instincts go back millions of years to our primate ancestors. Others argue that cliffside and treetop living came later, once fire and tools gave us enough breathing room to innovate. But in your experience, necessity breeds invention. The ground is dangerous. So you climb. Children are taught early how to ascend. At first, they crawl along low branches under watchful eyes. Then they learn how to grip, swing, and balance. One girl, barely 5 summers old, already scales trees faster than most adults. Her laughter echoes through the leaves, but you remind her, always climb in silence when the wind is still. Laughter can bring hunters. Your group has begun to adapt in other ways too. You store food in hanging baskets far above the ground, out of reach from prowling scavengers. You tie crude ladders from vines, allowing faster ascent and descent. Some even carry sharpened sticks up into the trees, just in case. At night, the forest below hums with life. Owls call. Insects buzz. Somewhere far off, a leopard growls. But here, suspended between earth and sky, you feel a fragile peace. The fire burns at the base of the tree. Its glow barely reaches you, but the smoke rises, curling around the trunk like a spirit. That, too, helps. Predators hate smoke. One night, during a thunderstorm, lightning strikes a neighboring tree. The crash is deafening. Flames race along the branches. Your group scrambles, leaping from limb to limb, rain soaking your backs. But no one dies. In the morning, you find the charred remains of the predator that had stalked you for days. The storm saved you. Or maybe the height did. You're beginning to think differently now. Elevation isn't just a refuge, it's a tool. You use it to scout, to plan. From up here, you can spot herds migrating, streams drying, or rival groups drawing near. You've seen hawks hunt from above and realized something: power comes from perspective. The higher you climb, the farther you see, and the more you know. That knowledge changes things. You're not just reacting anymore. You're predicting. You learn to recognize the patterns of animals far below, how they move before an attack, how they sniff the air before scenting prey. You mimic their instincts, then add your own. You learn to think ahead. Some nights, the tree sways so violently you fear it will throw you off like a flea. But still, you choose this over sleeping on the ground. Every branch grown is better than the silence that comes before a predator's pounce. Even the youngest now understand, the higher you sleep, the better your chances. It's not permanent. You know that. One day, the trees won't be enough. You'll need something more. A cave, perhaps. A structure. A wall. But for now, while the forest is still thick and the predators still hunt, you have this. The trees have become your fortress. Nature's ladder, your sanctuary. And in your dreams, when the fire's glow fades and the wind hushes through the leaves, you see yourself not just surviving here, but thriving. You are no longer simply prey. You are learning to rise above it. Your grip tightens on the sharpened stick in your hand, but you're not alone, and that makes all the difference. Around you, others stand ready, just as tense, just as aware of the dangers lurking beyond the tree line. You're a group now. A pack. And even the fiercest beast thinks twice before attacking one. You didn't always move this way. There was a time when survival meant solitude, quiet steps, hiding, slipping between shadows. But those days passed quickly. One person alone is meat. Two might last a little longer. But 5, 10, 20. That's a force of nature. You walk together now, in clusters and shifting formations. The older ones stay toward the center, the young near them. The strongest flank the group, watching, listening. You speak with glances and small hand signals, the beginnings of a language built from survival. You've learned that a single lookout can save a dozen lives. If one spots danger, all respond. No hesitation. It's not just walking or hunting that changes, everything does. You sleep in clusters, back to back. You take turns tending the fire. When someone falls ill or gets injured, they're not left behind. They're carried. You understand now, the group is only as strong as the weakest among you. So you protect each other. At night, the watch begins. It's quiet, but not restful. Pairs take shifts, perched in trees or nestled in caves, scanning the darkness for movement. You've seen lions test your perimeter, slinking low, eyes gleaming. But you've also seen what happens when you act as one. A volley of shouts, a rain of thrown stones, a line of firebrands, and the predator runs, you're beginning to trust others with your life. That's new. You've seen it go wrong before. Jealousies, food stolen, fights over shelter. But more often now, you see bonds grow. One hunter shares meat with another's child. Someone risks their life pulling a friend out of a river. Slowly, these shared struggles shape a culture. Even if you don't have a name for it yet, historians still debate how early humans shifted from loose bands to cooperative societies. Some argue it was environmental stress, scarce food or increased predator threats, that forced humans to band together. Others believe it was cognitive evolution, the growth of empathy, memory, communication. But for you, it's simple. Alone, you die. Together, you live, even your hunts have changed. You move in silence, coordinated. One group drives animals toward a waiting line of spears. Another circles behind, cutting off escape. You've taken down creatures bigger than you, creatures with tusks, with horns, with claws. You wouldn't dream of doing it alone. But with the group, you feel brave, the predators notice. They're learning too. They no longer charge recklessly. They test. They watch. But now, so do you. You mimic the wolves, sniffing the air, studying footprints. You imitate the vultures, sensing where death is near. Your group becomes more than a family. It becomes a thinking organism, and when you build shelters, you do it together. Not just for yourself, but for the collective. You form a ring of stones, a barrier around your sleeping area. Not just to hold the fire, but to hold the group's center. Everything revolves around that glowing heart. Sometimes, there are disagreements. A dispute over food. A challenge for leadership. But even then, you see restraint. You know the cost of division. A splintered group is easy prey. So you negotiate. Or you exile, if there's no other way. Survival has taught you hard rules. One morning, a child goes missing. The entire group halts. You search for hours, retracing paths, calling softly. Eventually, you find her, cornered beneath a ledge, a wild dog snarling inches away. But she's not alone. Another child stayed with her, refusing to leave. That child is bruised, bitten, but alive. And you understand something deeper now. Courage doesn't just come from strength. It comes from belonging. That night, around the fire, someone makes a mark on the dirt, two curved lines enclosing smaller dots. It's meaningless to anyone else. But to you, it represents your group. A shared symbol. An early sign of identity. You don't have words for it yet, but you feel it in your bones. This is your people. As time passes, new faces join. Some are outsiders, lone survivors, escaped slaves from other groups, injured wanderers. You watch them carefully. Not all are trustworthy. But some prove themselves. They bring skills you've never seen before, ways to fish, to snare birds, to treat wounds with herbs. And your group grows stronger. There are still losses. You bury them together. Sometimes you mark the graves with stones or carvings. Other times, you just sit in silence, passing around memories like warm embers. Death no longer feels like a private wound, it becomes something you share, just like survival. The animals adapt too. Some become bolder. Others avoid you entirely. One pack of hyenas tracks your group for days, trying to pick off stragglers. You respond with a perimeter, with noise, with night patrols. Eventually, they move on. And in that moment, you feel it, how much you've changed. Once, you were a scattered prey species. Now, you are a unit. A force. You don't just react to danger, you anticipate it. You don't just run, you resist. And every moment you share with the group, every story, every warning, every scar, builds something greater than fear. You're still vulnerable, yes. But no longer helpless. Not while you stand side by side, fire at your feet, spears in your hands, and trust in your heart. The stone in your hand is heavier than it looks. Its edge, chipped just right, glints in the afternoon sun. You didn't find it this way, you made it. Bashed it, flaked it, shaped it. It started as a rock. Now it's something else, a tool, yes, but also a weapon. And in this world, that distinction matters more than you can yet imagine. The lion crouching in the distance doesn't know that. To it, you're still prey, meat with legs. But you grip the stone tighter, and something changes. It sees your stance, your eyes. It smells not just fear, but fire, smoke, sweat, and blood. You're not an easy kill. Not anymore. The earliest tools were crude, sharp flakes used to scrape meat from bone. Or dig roots from stubborn soil. But as time passed, your group learned to shape stones for more than just gathering. The edges became finer. The points sharper. Handles were fashioned from branches, then tied tight with sinew or vine. Now, you carry something in your hand that can do what bare skin and teeth never could: defend, and if necessary, kill. You're not the only one. Around the fire, others sharpen their own stones, each with a different style. Some prefer long blades. Others, heavy hand axes. A few have begun to fashion spears, fire-hardened wood tipped with stone, balanced for throwing or thrusting. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about readiness. You remember the first time your group used these tools to defend rather than hunt. A pack of painted wolves had circled your camp for days, drawn by the scent of smoked meat. They were lean, desperate. You'd seen their eyes before, wild with hunger, too far gone to be afraid. That night, they attacked. It should have been a massacre. They were faster, more coordinated, born to kill. But they hadn't counted on the spears. On the way the stones flashed in the firelight. On how your group had practiced, not just throwing, but timing. They came howling into the camp and left in silence. Not all of them made it back into the forest. That victory marked a turning point. Something shifted in the air. The older ones stopped looking at the ground when they walked. The children listened more carefully when the tools were explained. You had proven something, not just to the predators, but to yourselves. Historians still debate exactly when early humans began to weaponize tools deliberately. Some point to remains of sharpened bones over 2 million years old. Others argue it wasn't until the later Stone Age that real weapons emerged, specially crafted for defense, not utility. But the precise date doesn't matter when you're here, in the dirt, holding your first hand axe and knowing it could save your life. It's not just the tool, it's the mind behind it. You look at the forest differently now. That stick could become a spear. That stone, a hammer. Even bones, once discarded, become handles or blades. Everything you touch has potential. Every shape becomes a question: what can this become? Even the act of making weapons becomes part of your group's rhythm. You gather around the fire in the evenings, flinting and chipping by torchlight. Each crack of stone against stone echoes like a heartbeat. Sometimes, someone will discover a new technique, a better angle, a new type of grip. When that happens, they teach it to the others. Not because they're told to, but because they know, a stronger group means a safer night. You start to assign roles. The best flint knapper no longer hunts, he makes tools full-time. A younger girl, quick and agile, gathers the right kind of stones from the riverbed. Another learns how to repair broken spear tips, carefully chipping away damaged edges. Each person contributes. No one is idle, then there's practice. You set up logs and bones for target throwing. You test spear weight, throwing range, even wind resistance. What began as defense has turned into strategy. You're thinking ahead. That's what predators do. And now, so do you. One afternoon, you hear shouts. A boar, massive and bleeding, barrels through the trees, injured, but not fatally. A younger boy had tried to chase it off alone. Now he's being pursued. You and 3 others leap into action, spears raised. The boar is strong, fast, but it doesn't know how to fight together. You surround it. Jab. Dodge. Jab again. It collapses minutes later. The boy survives, shaking but whole. It's messy. It's dangerous. But it works. And when it's done, you sharpen your spears again, because you know this won't be the last time, but tools aren't just about killing. Sometimes, their presence alone is enough. You walk through a ravine one day and find tracks, massive cat paws, fresh in the dust. You raise your spear, the others do too. The creature never shows. Maybe it was nearby. Maybe it was watching. But maybe it saw the weapons and decided you weren't worth it. Tools begin to shape the way you think. You're more confident, more deliberate. You notice small details, how certain trees yield better shafts, how dry grass helps kindle a fire faster. The world around you stops being filled with threats and starts being filled with materials. You're not just reacting to danger anymore. You're preparing for it. You make caches of stones near your shelters. Hide backup weapons in tree hollows. Teach the children how to swing a club or aim a rock. No one is useless. Everyone has a place, and when night falls, and the fire glows again, you set your weapons beside you, not just for show, but as a silent message to the dark: we are not easy prey. A squirrel darts across your path, and you freeze, not because you're afraid of it, but because you're afraid of what it might be running from. Your eyes scan the underbrush. You wait, breath held. Nothing. Just the breeze in the grass and the rustle of leaves. Still, the hairs on your arms stay raised. You've learned by now, animals notice danger long before you do, and that's when it clicks. They're not just food. They're not just predators. They're your warning system. You begin to pay closer attention. At first, it's just casual observation. You notice that birds suddenly go silent right before a large predator passes nearby. You see how deer move in herds, jerking their heads at the slightest sound. You realize that monkeys scream not just for fun, but to signal something's coming. Slowly, these patterns stop being coincidences and start becoming tools. You start to mimic them, cautiously, curiously. When the birds fall quiet, you stop moving. When the monkeys chatter wildly, you crouch low. When the antelopes suddenly bolt for no reason, you don't ask questions. You run. And often, it saves your life. One dusk, a strange stillness settles over the clearing. No frogs croak. No insects buzz. A few heartbeats later, you hear it, the soft growl of a stalking cat. Had you not paid attention, it might have caught you unaware. But now, thanks to the silence of the swamp, you and your group move quickly. Out of reach, it becomes a kind of code. You learn that squirrels tend to chirp before snakes slither through their trees. That hares stamp their feet before they flee. That certain birds have different calls for skyborne dangers and ground threats. Your ears become sharper. Your senses more tuned. The forest becomes less a wall of noise and more a living message board. Historians still debate how intentionally early humans relied on animal behavior to detect threats. Some suggest it was instinctual, an inherited alertness to environmental changes. Others argue it was learned, part of a deepening connection to nature through observation and memory. But for you, the answer is clear: those who listened survived. Those who didn't, vanished. Soon, the role of listener becomes one of honor in your group. A sharp-eyed woman named Cal watches the treetops before you even move. A boy named Tolo can tell, just from bird calls, whether a leopard or a snake is nearby. They walk ahead, silent, eyes always scanning. Their word is trusted more than fire. You begin to assign watches not just for predators, but for nature itself. One day, Cal notices that the birds to the west are behaving oddly, flying in frantic spirals. She urges everyone to move. Hours later, the wind brings smoke. A wildfire, miles off, racing toward your camp. You would have never known in time without the birds. You even learn to manipulate this knowledge. One group in your band starts mimicking alarm calls of certain animals to create confusion, scaring off scavengers or warning the others of ambushes. Some begin to call this speaking the forest, even if the language is made of whistles and grunts. It works the other way, too. Predators learn your sounds. They become wary of human noises, especially the crack of a branch underfoot or the clang of stone. So, your group begins to move quieter, stepping in time with the wind, whispering instead of shouting, choosing clothing and gear that doesn't rattle or crunch. Soon, silence becomes sacred. Not the fearful silence of prey, but the intelligent silence of hunters who have learned to listen. The night becomes less terrifying, because you're not just watching with your eyes, you're hearing with the forest's ears. There's a kind of beauty in it, too. You start to recognize individual animal calls, notice their moods, their migrations, even their relationships. A pair of owls call back and forth each night, forming a rhythm you find comfort in. A family of jackals sings before dawn. The forest becomes a symphony of intention, and you're no longer just an outsider listening in. You're part of the music. One night, a young child goes missing. Panic spreads, but Cal quiets everyone. She crouches low, listening, not for the child, but for the shift in the animals. The frogs are silent in one direction. The birds are stirred but not in alarm. She leads you there, and soon, you hear the soft crying. The child is found, scared but unharmed, curled beside a log. The forest had whispered, and you had understood. This way of listening starts to change how you think. You stop assuming that danger always comes crashing through the trees. Instead, you expect it to arrive quietly, signaled only by absence or subtle change. You know now that it's not always about sight. It's about feeling the air, sensing the shift in rhythm, noticing when a branch should have creaked but didn't, and so, even your sleep changes. You no longer rely on fire alone. You rely on the forest. You sleep with one ear open, with the subtle assurance that if something goes wrong, nature will stir, and you will know. You begin to realize something powerful: survival isn't always about fighting. It's about awareness. The world doesn't always scream before it bites. But it always whispers. And now, you're finally listening. The cave mouth looms ahead, dark and wide like an open throat. You hesitate for a moment, listening. The wind moans faintly through the stone. No growls. No animal scent. Just the cool dampness of still air. You step inside. At first, you only enter during the day, curious, cautious. The walls feel like cold skin, slick with condensation. Your feet crunch on loose pebbles. The deeper you go, the more silence presses in, heavy as stone. But soon, you realize something vital: this place doesn't just hide you from rain or sun. It hides you from eyes, from scent, from the claws of things that hunt in the dark. This cave is not just a shelter. It's a fortress. The others join you later. One by one. Some are unsure. The dark unsettles them. The stories passed down from elder to child speak of spirits inside caves, of monsters with glowing eyes. But over time, you light fires, and the space changes. The smoke rises, curling into the crevices above. Shadows flicker across the jagged walls, but they're your shadows now. The cave begins to feel like home. It's not perfect. Moisture drips from cracks. Bats flutter and shriek in the high recesses. But the benefits outweigh the discomfort. Outside, predators can stalk you from any angle. Inside, there's only one entrance. One way in. And now, you've started placing large stones near the mouth each night, rolling them into place once everyone is inside. It's slow, noisy work, but it keeps out the prowlers. Historians have long pointed to early evidence of cave habitation in places like France, South Africa, and Indonesia. Some argue caves were seasonal shelters. Others believe they were more permanent, serving as ancestral homes, sacred sites, or emergency refuges. But you don't need theories. You need protection. And this stone womb offers it. You begin to divide the space. The driest corner becomes the sleeping area. The fire pit sits in the middle, vented through a natural shaft above. The back wall, cooler and flatter, becomes your storage. You stack tools, spare hides, firewood. Even the injured have a place now. They rest far from the entrance, surrounded by warmth and quiet. One night, a storm tears across the valley. Lightning flashes, thunder cracks open the sky. Outside, branches fall like spears, and water floods the forest floor. But inside the cave, you are dry. Safe. You press your back to the stone, listening to the chaos, and realize how far you've come from the days of sleeping exposed under trees, but with safety comes new dangers. You learn that some creatures already live in caves. Bears. Leopards. Even snakes, tucked into holes too narrow for your spears. One morning, you return to find your fire cold and a massive bear asleep on your furs. You retreat, quiet as death, and wait all day before it leaves. After that, you begin marking cave entrances. Scents. Scorched rocks. Even smeared ash to signal occupied. It works, usually. You also begin to use smoke as a test. Before entering a new cave, someone lights a small bundle of dry grass and tosses it in. If something lives inside, it stirs. If not, the smoke curls lazily out the mouth. This technique saves lives. It also teaches you something crucial: even the deepest dark can be probed with enough care. Eventually, you begin to make the cave your own. Someone grinds ochre and charcoal into powder. With fingers and sticks, you mark the walls, handprints, animals, symbols. Maybe they're warnings. Maybe prayers. Maybe memories of hunts and loved ones. But even without meaning, they do something important: they claim the space. It's not just about hiding anymore. It's about belonging. The cave isn't just a defense. It's an extension of your group. A place to gather, to plan, to mourn. When someone dies, you bury them in a small hollow in the back chamber. You lay stones over their body, place a tool beside them, light a fire in their memory. For the first time, death doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels like return. There's one moment you'll never forget: the cave is quiet. The children are asleep. The fire has burned low. Then, from outside, a sound, low, guttural, not quite animal. A strange, chuffing cough. You and two others press to the wall, hearts pounding. You grab your spears, listening. A leopard's face appears at the entrance. Its eyes catch the firelight. It doesn't charge. It stares. A full minute passes. Then, without warning, it turns and melts back into the dark. You hear it pad away through the leaves. You stay alert the rest of the night, but it doesn't return. In the morning, you find its tracks, just outside the stone barrier. It could have leapt in. But it didn't. Maybe it sensed something. Maybe it remembered the last time it tried, and the wounds it carried away. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw the handprints on the wall and recognized this place not as an empty den, but as a human stronghold. You breathe easier after that. The cave feels different. Not just safer, stronger. As if the walls themselves are learning to defend you. Each night you return, light a fire, press your palms to the stone, and feel something beneath the surface. Not spirits. Not ghosts. But memory. Persistence. Continuity. And so, this cave, once feared, now trusted, becomes a kind of legacy. A place where each stone echoes with survival. A place where the wild stops at the threshold. There comes a day when you leave the cave behind, not forever, but for something greater. The seasons are changing. The animals are on the move, and so must you. You pack what you can: flint tools, dried meat, fire-starting stones. You leave markings at the entrance, symbols etched into the rock so that if others come, they'll know this was once a shelter, a sanctuary. Maybe even sacred. You follow the river now, walking upstream with your group. The forest thickens, but you're stronger than before. Wiser. The nights no longer fill you with dread. You know how to choose high ground. How to hide your scent. How to listen for the snap of a twig that wasn't made by your own kind. These instincts, once guesses, are now sharpened into something more. A sixth sense. The mind of a survivor, you find your way to a place of cliffs and grasslands. Wide open spaces where herds roam in the hundreds, antelope, mammoths, even woolly rhinos. But they're not alone. The predators are here too, cave lions, wolves, packs of hyenas that howl across the plains like broken wind. You set up camp near a small grove, surrounded by thorn bushes. You've learned the value of these plants. Their branches are like spears themselves, impossible to sneak through silently. The first night, you don't sleep much. The fire crackles, your eyes shift constantly. You watch shadows dance just outside the glow. But the fire holds, and the predators keep their distance. In the morning, you scout. You look for natural defenses, rock outcrops, tree clusters, river bends. You're no longer just reacting to threats. You're planning ahead. You find a ridge overlooking a valley. From here, you can see in every direction. The elevation gives you time to prepare, to act. You decide this is your new base. A temporary fortress. You spend days hauling stones to create low walls. You dig shallow pits lined with sharpened stakes to catch animals that get too close. It's crude, but it works. One evening, you notice something new, patterns in the way animals move. The way birds go silent before danger. The way deer suddenly lift their heads and freeze. You begin to understand that the world speaks, even when it doesn't use words. You just have to know how to listen. That night, a pack of wolves tests your defenses. They approach low, quiet, eyes glowing like coals. But you're ready. You and the others bang stones together, shout, throw burning sticks. The wolves hesitate, then scatter into the dark. No blood was shed, no life lost. But your heart pounds like a drum long after they've gone. You're reminded that survival isn't just about strength. It's about anticipation. Over time, you begin experimenting. Fire is no longer just warmth or light. It's a weapon. You torch the edges of your camp to keep beasts at bay. You fashion torches soaked in fat to wave in the dark. Even more, you start burning specific patches of land to drive game toward traps, controlled fire. A dangerous tool, but one that reshapes the land to your needs. The predators adapt too. They grow more cautious, less bold. You see fewer attacks. Not because they've vanished, but because they've learned that humans are not easy prey. You've upset the balance. Where once you were the hunted, now you are something else. A rival, and yet, your defenses remain humble. No great walls. No towers. Just instinct, fire, teamwork. You understand now that the most powerful defense isn't what surrounds you. It's what unites you. The old woman who once fled screaming from a shadow now stands guard with a club. The boy who cried at night now sleeps with a stone blade under his mat, calm and alert. You've changed them. Not with commands, but with example. And in doing so, you've created something rare in this world, trust. One day, you watch a group of antelope wander near your ridge. One limps, favoring its back leg. Easy prey, perhaps. But your group doesn't move to attack. Not yet. You've begun to think differently about risk. The hunt is not just about meat, it's about timing, safety, energy. You weigh each decision like a chief, even if no one calls you that. In this age, titles don't matter. Only actions do. You remember, faintly, a time when every day felt like a gamble. When the dark was filled with monsters, and your bones ached from sleeping on cold earth. But now, you sit atop a ridge, the wind brushing your face, and you realize something extraordinary: you are not just surviving anymore. You are living. The wild hasn't disappeared. It never will. But you've carved out a space within it, a small island of intention. Your group has grown in confidence, in cohesion. Children laugh more. Elders speak of memories instead of only warnings. There's space now for stories, for song, for something like peace, but peace is not permanent. One morning, while checking traps, you spot signs, tracks too large for a wolf. Claw marks gouged into tree bark. A broken branch 8 feet high. You recognize it for what it is: a bear. A large one. Maybe hungry. Maybe curious. You gather the others and speak not with fear, but with clarity. We don't run, you say. We prepare. You reinforce the perimeter. You stash fresh meat far from the camp to draw the bear away. You assign watches. That night, when the bear finally arrives, snorting, lumbering toward the fire, it finds a wall of people standing shoulder to shoulder, torches high, voices loud. The bear hesitates. A moment of stillness, then, it turns and vanishes into the dark. You exhale, not in relief, but in pride. You have become the very thing your ancestors once feared, a force of nature, capable of turning the wilderness back upon itself. The seasons shift once more, and with them, so do your plans. The cold begins to creep down from the mountains, first as a whisper in the wind, then as frost on leaves, then as a firm grip that tightens with every sunrise. You've learned that winter is more than just snow. It is hunger. Stillness. Time itself slowed to a crawl. And the creatures that remain active during this time? They are the most dangerous of all. You've seen it before, the way even the bravest hunters grow thin by midwinter. How food becomes more precious than fire, and how those without preparation vanish into snowdrifts, never to return. But this year will be different. Because this year, you are different. You begin to stockpile supplies with a kind of quiet urgency. Not panic, just intention. You dry meat from recent hunts. You gather roots, nuts, bark, anything with calories. You show others how to wrap animal fat in hide and bury it underground, insulated against rot. These caches could mean the difference between survival and starvation. You build windbreaks from woven branches, strengthen the shelter's walls with thick mud and grass, and add extra insulation made from animal hides. You craft cold weather garments, cloaks stitched from fur, boots stuffed with moss. You trade your lighter tools for heavier, colder weather weapons, spears tipped with flint thick enough to pierce the hide of a winter bear. But you also prepare mentally. You speak to the group about patience, about how winter is not an enemy to be defeated but a test to be endured. You remind them that predators grow bolder in snow, not because they're stronger, but because they're desperate. And desperation can be predicted. When the snow finally arrives, it does so in silence. A white curtain falling over the world. The sounds of the forest dull. The air holds its breath. And still, you move, carefully, methodically. You break trails through the snow. You mark trees with strips of hide so you won't get lost in a storm. You assign guard shifts and rotate them with care, making sure no one grows too cold for too long. There's a moment, deep in the night, when you wake to silence. No crackling fire, no footsteps, not even the wind. And then you hear it, a low growl. Not far. A slow, heavy padding through the drifts. You rise, heart pounding, and quietly wake the others. You each take a torch. No shouting this time. Just stillness and fire. From the edge of the camp, 2 golden eyes watch you, a snow-covered cat. Huge. Silent. Muscles tense beneath its fur. It does not leap, it stares. Then, with a snort of hot breath, it backs away into the trees. It's not that you frightened it. It's that it realized something most animals still don't understand. You are organized. You are not a meal. You are a problem, and predators don't like problems. The days shorten, the cold deepens. But you endure. Not just because of the fire or the food, but because of the rituals you've created, ways to hold the darkness back. You tell stories around the fire, of brave ancestors, of clever animals, of how the sun will return. You carve small figures from bone and place them in the shelter's corners, guardians, reminders of hope. You teach children how to listen to the wind, how to recognize when ice is too thin, how to move slowly so as not to draw attention. Even when sickness comes, and it always does in winter, you respond with calm. You use herbs you gathered in warmer days. You boil water with heated stones. You isolate the sick, not to punish, but to protect. You give them warmth and soft words. Some survive. Some do not, but no one dies alone. That, you've decided, is what it means to truly defend a group, not just to fight off predators or build shelters, but to ensure no one is abandoned, even when the worst happens. One night, during the coldest moon, you find yourself unable to sleep. You rise and walk to the edge of the camp. The stars are bright, the snow glowing faintly beneath them. And for a moment, you feel like a part of the landscape. Something old. Permanent. You think of all the generations before you who sat in places like this. Who stared at the stars and listened to the night. You wonder how many of them made it through. How many built defenses not just from sticks and stones, but from trust, courage, and memory. A shape moves in the trees, not a predator this time, a woman, wrapped in furs, holding a bundle of dried berries. She's come to relieve your watch shift, without you needing to ask. You nod, she nods back. No words, just understanding. That is your greatest defense of all, not the traps or fire, but each other. You've built something more powerful than any wall. You've built resilience. And with it, you will not just survive the winter, you will outlast it. The snow begins to melt, at first in patches, like secret messages hidden beneath the forest's white blanket. You notice them before anyone else, tiny streams trickling between roots, the drip 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 from trees, the sudden return of birdsong echoing through the still cold air. After the long freeze, even the smallest sign feels like a celebration. But with thawing comes new danger. Spring is a season of renewal, yes, but also of hunger. The great beasts that slept through the winter are waking, lean and ravenous. Bears emerge from dens with ribs showing, teeth yellow, tempers short. Packs of wolves, having lost many of their own, roam farther from their old territory, sniffing for prey. They are willing to risk more now, and prey animals haven't quite returned in full. Herds have not yet migrated back. The ground is too soft for proper tracking. Traps that once worked in the snow are no longer reliable. The land itself feels like it's holding its breath, not quite sure if the worst is over. But you don't wait for certainty, you adapt. You show your people how to craft new traps for spring. Snares hidden beneath new grass, pits disguised with fresh foliage. You guide the young ones in listening to the birds again, learning which calls signal calm, and which mean alarm. These signs are your early warnings, your invisible scouts. At the same time, you begin scouting yourself. Venturing beyond your winter perimeter. You test the strength of bridges made from fallen logs, remap trails washed out by melted snow, and watch for claw marks on trees. The world is waking up, and with it comes a shift in strategy, from defense to preemption, and one morning, that strategy is put to the test. You hear it before you see it, a distant wailing, high and panicked. You and 3 others sprint toward the sound, weapons drawn. A child had wandered away from the main camp. Not far, just over the ridge, chasing a rabbit. But now the child is cornered by a lone wolf, its eyes glassy with starvation. The wolf hesitates when it sees you. It is unsure whether to attack or retreat. For a single, frozen moment, you meet its eyes, and in them you see what desperation does to all living things. It lunges, but you are ready. You strike fast, not with cruelty but with purpose. The wolf falls, and the child clings to you, sobbing into your shoulder. You carry them back in silence, and that night, no one speaks much. Instead, they bring offerings to the fire, a scrap of meat, a carved trinket, a handful of herbs. It is their way of saying thank you. Not just to you, but to the spirits of the land that allowed you to return alive. That night, you lie awake thinking about the wolf. How it looked. How it moved. You realize that animals are no longer your only threat, because now, humans are moving again too. You find signs near your hunting paths, footprints that don't belong to your people. Fires long since burned out. Bones split in ways your group would never split them. You realize another tribe has returned to this territory, or worse, they never left. Maybe they too endured the winter. Maybe they too are hungry. This raises a deeper question: what happens when it is humans you must defend against? Historians still debate whether early human groups were more cooperative or more hostile when meeting outsiders. Some believe trade and shared stories helped civilizations bloom. Others argue that resources were so limited, strangers were more often met with spears than songs. You feel both possibilities in your bones. You don't panic, but you prepare. You assign extra scouts. You sharpen every tool. You train the adolescents in drills, whistle signals, hiding techniques, how to confuse a trail. You even rehearse what to do if someone is taken or if the camp must be abandoned. These things are not pleasant to think about. But they are necessary. You speak to the elders, too, those with long memories and quiet eyes. They tell you stories from their youth, of when a rival group once came through these woods, asking for food. The outcome depended not just on strength, but on how the first meeting went. Whether fear won, or trust did, so you make a plan. Not for war, not yet, but for contact. You begin to leave subtle signs along the trails, symbols carved into trees. Tokens that mean peace to those who understand them. If the strangers respond, there may be room for negotiation. If not, well. You will still be ready. The forest smells different now. Damp earth, blooming moss, the sharp tang of flowers forcing their way through frost. But beneath it all, there is tension. Like two predators circling one another, unseen, but not unaware. One evening, while walking the riverbank, you see them, two figures. One male, one female. Their bodies lean, their faces wary. They wear cloaks like yours, but different patterns. They hold spears, but not at the ready. They see you. You see them. No one moves. Slowly, you lower your weapon. You hold up a carved charm made from bone and red berries. A universal sign of peace in your region. They do not smile. But the woman lowers her spear. It is not trust, but it is a start. You return to camp and tell no one. Not yet. Because you know how fragile these things are. Fear can undo everything. You will speak when the time is right. For now, you add one more lesson to your people's growing list, that the world is not only full of animals and weather and hunger. It is also full of people, and people can be your greatest danger, or your greatest allies, depending on what you choose to become. By now, the young ones follow your lead without hesitation. Even the elders defer to your quiet judgment. You've become more than just a protector, you're a guide through uncertain times. The forest is greener, warmer, but it's also more unpredictable. As your surroundings shift, so must your strategies. After your first silent encounter with the outsiders, you begin noticing more signs: fresh footprints near the northern trail, a pile of split fish bones placed deliberately on a flat stone, small stone figurines left under trees. You recognize these as messages, not random litter. Someone is speaking in the old way, where symbols carried meaning when language could not bridge gaps. You respond in kind. You leave a small totem made of feathers and red ochre clay on a mossy stump. A sign of curiosity and goodwill. A few days later, it's replaced by one wrapped in grass twine, signaling acknowledgement. This cautious exchange continues for weeks, and during that time, your people flourish under the new season. Spring brings berries, insects, frogs, foods you hadn't tasted in months. Small mammals return. Fish move upstream. You show your group how to build weirs, primitive fish trap set between rocks, and soon you're pulling silver-scaled prizes from the river without a single thrown spear. You also take advantage of new construction opportunities. You teach the young how to lash saplings together for stronger huts, how to thatch roofs with overlapping ferns, how to carve drainage trenches to protect against spring floods. You even introduce smoke pits to cure meat, giving your group the power to store food more efficiently than before. You're no longer surviving, you're planning, but still, the other humans weigh on your thoughts, and one afternoon, they arrive. 5 of them, emerging quietly from the southern forest. No war cries. No drawn spears. Their bodies are painted in symbols you don't recognize, their expressions unreadable. But they raise their palms, open and empty, the oldest gesture of non-aggression known to your kind. You step forward alone, around you, your people wait, tensed but silent. You lift your own hand, mirroring their gesture. Then, slowly, you approach until only a few paces separate you. Close enough to see the scars on their arms, the hunger behind their eyes. The tallest man speaks first. His words are unfamiliar, but you catch the tone, a mix of caution and request. You answer with simple phrases, gestures, and objects, pointing to fish, miming sharing, indicating peace. Bit by bit, meaning takes shape. The strangers are part of a group 2 valleys away. Their winter was brutal. They lost many. They need to trade. They offer woven bark containers, strange herbs, red stones that spark fire when struck against iron. In return, they ask for food, and for safe passage along the riverbanks. You don't decide immediately. Instead, you invite them to sit by the fire. You offer cooked roots and a slice of dried meat. They eat slowly, gratefully. One of them, a younger woman, pulls out a shell ornament and places it near your feet, a gift. It's a token of respect. Your people watch this, their eyes wide. Later, you gather your group and explain what happened. Some are nervous. Others curious. A few, especially the older ones, argue that this is how wars start, by opening the door too far. You listen to all sides. And then, in the firelight, you explain a deeper truth, that humans aren't just warriors or wanderers. We are storytellers. Traders. Allies. Friends. But only when we choose to be. You decide to accept their offer, cautiously. You create rules. They may pass, but not stay. Trade is welcome, but weapons must be shown at the border. These rules are carved into bark and bound to the trail markers. The strangers agree. Over the following weeks, a strange harmony forms. You learn new words. You share animal tracking methods. You show them how to shape fire-hardened spear points. In return, they teach your people how to weave tight baskets and how to harvest salt from river rocks. Children from both groups begin to mimic each other's games. Elders exchange stories in grunts and laughter, even when they don't fully understand one another's tongue. A new kind of defense begins to form, not one of walls or spears, but of connection. Still, you remain alert, because not all alliances are equal. And not all threats come from the forest. One night, while scouting near a ridge, you spot movement, too quiet for an animal. You crouch in the darkness and see him, a man from another group entirely. His hair is tied differently. His body is covered in ash, and his weapon is sleek, deadly. He hasn't come to trade, he's spying. You slip back silently, heart pounding. This is not one of the strangers you've made peace with. This is someone new, someone dangerous, and it confirms what you've suspected all along. Even in a time of peace, you must never let your guard fall. You return to camp and send runners to the other group. You need to know if they're involved. When they return the next morning, they're just as alarmed. The spy is not one of theirs. Now, the question is clear: do you wait for this new threat to reveal itself, or do you strike first? You gather your counsel and prepare for what may come. You reinforce the perimeter. You send scouts to the north. You create hidden caches of weapons and signal horns. You sleep lightly, listen carefully, and move deliberately, because you've come too far to let danger undo your progress. This is no longer just about protecting yourselves from animals, it's about preserving everything you've built, from nature, from hunger, and now, from other humans. The signs come swiftly, broken branches along the western ridge, scat not left by any animal you know, footprints far too large for your people or the allies downriver. You don't panic. You've trained for this. Every child knows what to do when the watchmen sound the horn carved from mammoth bone. You don't want a war. But you're no stranger to violence. You remember what happened seasons ago, back when a roaming band of raiders had tried to take your fishing grounds. The screams still echo faintly at the back of your memory. That time, your people weren't ready. This time, they are, but you also remember that peace, once earned, is worth holding on to, so you decide to gather information before acting. You choose a handful of the swiftest runners and send them out, not with weapons, but with eyes and ears. They move silently, barefoot along the soft forest floor, avoiding leaf piles, stepping on exposed roots and rocks to muffle their trail. They return within days, each with the same message: this is a war band. Not a scouting party. Perhaps 6 or 7 men, lean and fast. Ash-painted faces, jagged bone weapons, some with fire scars down their arms. They are watching, waiting. You suspect they're testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses, but they haven't attacked, not yet. You call a gathering at dusk, the children sit cross-legged, wide-eyed. The elders lean close to hear your every word. The hunters grip their spears. Your allies from the southern valley have sent 2 of their own to attend, and they listen intently as you trace a crude map in the dirt using a charred stick. You mark where the strangers were last seen. Where your traps are laid. Where the forest becomes too thick for easy travel, then, you reveal your plan: defense in layers. First, you move the children and weakest elders deeper into the forest, where a shelter has already been prepared, hidden behind thick mossy stone and towering ferns. Your best hunters take turns guiding them, always in pairs, never alone. Second, you create false camps, small fire rings and animal skins draped over empty shelters. Enough to fool anyone watching from the shadows into believing your people are still scattered and unguarded. Third, you prepare the signal system. Strips of bark hung at different angles. Animal bones left facing specific directions. Scratched patterns carved into tree trunks. Each one carries a meaning your people understand instantly: attack, retreat, regroup. Finally, you wait, and the waiting, as always, is the hardest part. Night falls thick and heavy. The forest air grows colder. Owls call. Insects drone. Your own breath sounds too loud in your ears. You crouch at the edge of camp with a sharpened bone spear in your hand and a stone knife at your hip. You are not alone. Your best hunter sits beside you, silent and watchful. You trust her completely. Then it happens, a flicker. A shape moving between trees. Not fast. Not loud. Just wrong. You don't shout. You don't give chase. You grip your spear tighter and wait for the signal. A faint whistle, barely audible, comes from the western ridge. Your people respond like water flowing around stone. No chaos. No panic. Just movement. Hunters vanish into the trees. Fires are doused with moss. Traps are sprung into place with a twist of sapling and stone. The war band enters cautiously. They expect fear. They expect scattered prey. They find thorns beneath the moss. Pitfalls dug along natural deer trails. Spears lashing out from the shadows. A fire breaks out, deliberately set, forcing them into the clearing you prepared. There, your people surround them. You don't aim to kill, you aim to prove something much more powerful: you are not the ones to be taken. 3 of the strangers flee. 2 are caught in snares. 1 is captured alive. When the dust settles, you step forward. The man is young, bruised, eyes wild. You kneel beside him, not as an executioner, but as a leader. You speak softly. You point to the edge of the forest. You show him the shell ornament given to you by your southern allies, the one you've kept in your pouch as a reminder of what peace can offer. Then you untie his hands and let him go. He runs, and you let him, because what he carries back is more powerful than any wound. He carries a warning, that your people are not easy prey. That you have watchers, defenders, a voice that echoes louder than fear. That you can choose peace, but are more than capable of war. In the days that follow, no others return. Instead, your southern allies send a full delegation, a sign of respect. They bring food, a young shaman, and new seeds they believe will flourish near your riverbank. They've heard what you did. Word travels faster than feet in these woods, and now, something begins to change. You are not just a survivor. Not even just a leader, you are becoming a legend. Your people begin calling you one who watches the forest. Children carve your likeness into bark. Elders say your name before lighting fires at night. Other groups, once distant and cautious, begin to send their own messengers, wondering if they too might learn from the wisdom of your camp. For the first time, you see the possibility of something more, something larger than just surviving each season: community, shared knowledge, a future that doesn't end with the next storm or raid, and it begins with what you've always done best: protecting those who cannot protect themselves, listening before acting, watching the dark, and waiting with wisdom. It is morning, and the air smells of damp earth and wood smoke. The danger has passed, for now. You sit beside the river, legs folded, watching the current drag leaves downstream. Your hands are still calloused from gripping weapons. But for the first time in many moons, you allow yourself to breathe without fear clawing at your chest. Around you, your people move with a quiet rhythm, cleaning tools, repairing snares, whispering softly. The elders have begun crafting new songs to remember what happened, humming melodies to soothe the frightened children. The story of how your village stood firm will be carved into stone, sung over fires, and retold through generations, but you know better than to assume peace will last forever. So you keep building. You begin with the land. You walk the edges of your territory, not as a scout this time, but as a planner. You study the trees, the slope of the ground, the animal trails. You speak with the gatherers and hunters. You ask the healers where herbs grow best. Piece by piece, you shape a new map in your mind. Together, you decide to expand, not just outward, but inward. You dig shallow trenches to divert water where the soil is dry. You mark spaces where trees will be planted for future wood, carefully choosing species that offer both shade and fruit. A space is cleared for the young to learn how to carve tools and shape rope from vines. Then, you address something deeper: connection. You begin to meet with the elders of nearby groups. At first, it's slow. Everyone remembers old betrayals. But you bring gifts, woven nets, dried meat, flint tools. And more importantly, you bring stories. You tell them about the strangers who came with painted faces. About the traps you laid and the boy you let live. You speak of the fire, the plan, the alliance that grew from it. You speak not as someone superior, but as someone who understands fear, and who chose something better. And something shifts. The next moon cycle, one of the northern tribes sends their young to train with your hunters. In return, they teach your people how to craft stronger bows with sinew and hardwood. You swap fishing techniques with the river folk. You learn to smoke herbs from a healer who lost her own family seasons ago. Each trade, each shared lesson, is a thread in something larger. You are building a web, and with it comes a new idea, one that had not yet taken full shape in your mind. What if survival was not about outlasting every threat, but about weaving a network so strong, so connected, that no one had to stand alone? So you propose something bold: a gathering. A meeting of all nearby groups, not for war, not for warning, but for knowledge. To share stories, tools, seeds. To dance beneath the stars. To remember that before the floods, before the cold, before fire and bone, your ancestors once stood together as one people. It takes time. Convincing wary leaders means many long nights of talking, listening, waiting. Some don't come. Others send scouts. But enough agree, and when the day arrives, your heart swells. They come across the river, on rafts tied with vines. They come down the mountain paths, bearing woven baskets and cured skins. They come in silence, in song, in the footsteps of those long gone, the clearing you chose buzzes with life. Fires are lit, not for war, but for warmth. Children from different groups stare at one another with shy curiosity, then begin to play. Elders exchange tales of long winters and clever ancestors. Hunters show off their best traps. Healers sit in circles, trading herbs and remedies. Laughter rises, hesitant at first, then full and rich. That night, under a sky littered with stars, you sit in the center of it all. The dancers move to the beat of hollowed logs and bone flutes. Sparks drift upward. Shadows stretch long. And in that glow, you see it clearly, this is what your people have always needed. Not walls, not weapons, not fear, understanding. Respect. Shared strength, you feel a hand touch your shoulder gently. It's the young shaman from the southern valley, the same one who once watched you with suspicion. Now, he sits beside you, offering a carved stone pendant in the shape of an open eye, for watching, he says. But also for seeing. You wear it with pride, because you've begun to see something else as well, the future, not one of endless running, of hiding in caves or clutching spears in the dark. But a future of bridges, built not from wood or stone, but from trust. Of knowledge passed hand to hand, like fire kept alive from ember to ember, you rise and speak. Your voice carrying over the clearing, you tell the story of how your people once lived in constant fear, of storms, beasts, hunger, and other humans. You speak of courage, of loss, of the night you let the stranger go free, then you speak of what came after. All around you, heads nod. Eyes gleam with something deeper than mere approval, hope. That night, you sleep not with a weapon under your hand, but with the sound of distant laughter, the scent of firewood, and the warmth of a dozen tribes gathered together under one sky. For the first time in your life, you do not dream of danger, you dream of a world worth protecting. The morning sun rises golden through the canopy, its light painting dappled patterns across your skin. Birds call in the trees, echoing across the valley, and for a moment, the world feels still, whole. You stretch slowly, listening not for threats, but for the rhythms of a new day. The great gathering has ended, but its echo remains. Your people return home changed. They carry new seeds, new songs, and a new understanding of what is possible. They walk with pride in their steps, not because they are the strongest or the most feared, but because they have begun to belong to something greater than themselves. You continue weaving, you turn your attention next to knowledge, not just the kind whispered by the elders, but the kind written in stone and bone. You and the others begin carving more intentionally, not just marks to count seasons or honor the dead, but stories, instructions, maps. The cliffs overlooking the river become a living archive, a place where your children's children will come to remember. In one section, you carve the shape of a trap, how to build it, where to place it, what to use as bait. In another, the path of stars as they move through the seasons. And beside these, the tale of a painted warrior who was shown mercy, and who later helped save the forest from fire. Every chisel stroke is a gift to the future. The children begin to learn early. You gather them beneath the great tree and speak of storms and survival. Of courage and cunning. They listen with wide eyes, then go off to mimic your words in games of chase and pretend. You smile, knowing these lessons are already becoming instinct, but your mind drifts again, to the horizon. There are still places you have not seen, voices you have not heard, stories you do not know. And if your people are to truly thrive, you must continue reaching outward. So you plan a journey, a great walk, not a raid. Not an escape. A sharing. You choose companions carefully, a healer, a singer, 2 skilled foragers, and a hunter who once lived with the mountain tribes. You gather gifts, woven cloth, obsidian flakes, dried mushrooms, polished shells. You wear no armor, only travel leathers and a mark of peace painted down your arm. Before you leave, the shaman blesses you. Not with chants of protection, but with a simple phrase, bring back stories. And so you walk. The days are long, but not lonely, you pass through grasslands where the herds run free and sleep in caves where ancestors once lit fires. You trade songs with wandering shepherds and help a river tribe repair a cracked canoe. You learn a new way to ferment roots into medicine. You share your own story by a fire made of saltwood. In one village, you meet a woman who speaks to birds. In another, a boy who mimics every sound he hears. Each person you meet, each moment of trust exchanged, becomes another thread in your web, and just as often, you listen, you hear of distant lands scorched by sun, where water is buried deep underground. Of cliffside homes carved into red stone. Of spirits that dwell in wind and thunder. You collect these tales like precious stones, storing them carefully within your memory. Eventually, you return. When you arrive, the village gathers, not with cries of victory, but with eager silence. You sit by the fire and begin to speak. You tell of kindness in strange places, of tools you've never seen, of rituals that made your heart tremble. The people lean in, eyes wide, minds open. You have become more than a leader now. You are a bridge, between tribes, between past and future, between what was and what could be, and that night, as you lie beneath the stars, you realize something powerful: the wilds will never fully be tamed. Storms will come. Beasts will return. Hunger will howl at the edges of your world. But what you've built, this network of memory, mercy, and meaning, it is stronger than any weapon, it is enduring. The next morning, a young girl approaches you shyly. She holds a bone flute, carved by her own hand. "Can I play for the next gathering?" she asks. You nod, because that, too, is defense. A people who create, who remember, who share, they do not vanish easily, and as her song rises over the hills, you smile. The world remains dangerous. But you are no longer merely surviving, you are shaping it. The rains come heavy this season, hammering the land with a fury that washes away trails, floods rivers, and threatens everything you've built. You stand beneath the overhang of the cliffside shelter, watching torrents carve new paths through the forest floor. Branches twist downstream like broken limbs. The sky growls, but you are not afraid. Your people have prepared. Years ago, this kind of flood would have scattered the clan. Homes would have been lost. Children swept away. But now, platforms raised on stilts keep your food stores dry. Stones line the water's edge to redirect overflow. Rain catchers, crafted from woven reeds and fire-hardened clay, store fresh water from the storm itself. You did not learn these things alone. The tools were borrowed, the designs traded, adapted, refined. Some from river clans, some from desert wanderers who store rain in underground cisterns, some from travelers who mark time by the shape of the moon. It's not just about building barriers, it's about learning to dance with the wild. The storm continues for days. You move carefully through the camp, checking shelters, comforting children, making sure no one is left cold or alone. The older ones sing to distract the younger. The weavers keep their hands busy by torchlight. Even the hunters, temporarily stranded, begin carving stories into bone. There's no panic, just movement. When the storm finally breaks, the air feels cleaner. The land breathes again. You organize a search of the area. Some paths are gone, others created anew. Fallen trees are turned into bridges. Mudslides reveal caches of stone once buried. You use it all. Because now, you see every change in the land not as destruction, but as opportunity. But not everything can be reclaimed. The flood has disturbed something deeper. In one of the caves, water has exposed a layer of bones, ancient, bleached, long forgotten. Not animal. Human. Laid in careful rows, tools beside them, red ochre staining the soil. It's a burial site, untouched for generations. The air around it is cold, though no wind blows. You gather the elders, you speak in hushed tones of respect, not fear. A circle is formed. A fire lit. The clan sings a low, slow song. One elder speaks, "They were here before us. Let them guide us, not haunt us." You nod. And together, You begin the careful work of reburying the dead, higher ground, marked stones, herbs placed beside the skulls. In that moment, you understand something new: defense isn't only about the living. It's about honoring what came before, what gave rise to you. Because the knowledge of survival isn't written on walls, it's carried in bones, and it's not long before new questions rise with the mist. A boy asks, "Were they like us?" You answer, "In some ways. But they didn't have what we have now." He thinks for a moment. "Because they didn't listen?" You nod. "Maybe. Or maybe. No one taught them." That answer lingers in the air, and so a new effort begins. You carve a great stone tablet, taller than you, curved like a tusk. Onto it, you etch your clan's knowledge: how to set a snare, how to boil poison from roots, how to identify an animal's age from its tracks. Next to it, you place smaller stones, each carved with a single symbol, representing shelter, fire, water, food, family, peace. Children come to trace the carvings with their fingers. They memorize the lines, recite them like songs. One begins to scratch new symbols beside yours, clumsy, unsure, but new. You do not stop her. You encourage it. Because defense now includes education. Storytelling. A culture strong enough to endure storms, hunger, and time. Historians still debate whether early humans developed formal education systems, or if knowledge was passed only through mimicry and myth. But you know now, what matters isn't the form, it's the intention. To teach is to protect. To teach is to guard the future, and there are other lessons to teach. You train a few of the youth in fire calling, how to start a blaze with flint and tinder in the dampest cold. Others you guide through shadow walking, moving unseen through the tall grasses. One girl becomes particularly skilled in crafting nets from spider silk patterns. Another boy discovers a way to keep meat from spoiling using bitter ash and salt leaf. You don't just teach what to do. You teach why. You explain the wind's shifting patterns, the reasons for a spear's balance, the language of bird alarms. You want them to think, to question, not just obey. Because true survival lies not in blind tradition, but in curious understanding. And slowly, it becomes clear, the animals are watching too. The great cats come no closer than they must. Packs of wild dogs skirt your territory now, sensing the shift in strength. Even the great bears seem to tread more carefully. They smell something different in your people: less prey, more presence. You have become part of the land's memory, and as the season draws to a close, you look over your village, platforms raised. Rivers guided, children learning, elders honored, and you feel something settle deep in your bones. You are not merely reacting to the wild anymore, you are shaping it, marking it, coexisting with it. This is not the end of danger, but it is the beginning of something far more powerful than safety: wisdom. It begins with a whisper at the edge of your territory, a rustle in the tall grass, an unnatural stillness in the trees. Then the birds fall silent. Even the insects hold their breath. Something is coming. You're not the only predators in these lands. Far beyond the river and jagged ridge, there are other humans, strange, nomadic bands who speak in sharp syllables and paint their bodies with streaks of white ash. You've heard stories, seen traces, broken snares, spear tips carved in ways unfamiliar, footprints with a slightly different gait. For seasons, your paths did not cross. Now, they do. It happens one morning at dawn. A scouting party doesn't return. Hours stretch thin. A second group goes after them, and only one returns, limping and bloodied, with an arrow lodged in his thigh. Not your kind of arrow. He falls to the ground, gasping, but alive enough to say two words: "They're close." Panic threatens to stir, but you quiet it with a raised hand. Defense is not just about animals anymore, it's about other people, those who see your land, your food, your fire, and feel envy instead of kinship. The question isn't just how to survive nature, but how to survive each other, so you act. First, you move the children and elders into the caves. Not the visible ones, but the hidden hollows behind thorned walls and narrow passes. You place sentries on the ridge. Men and women trained to see farther than most. Their job is not to fight, but to observe. You teach them to read smoke, how many fires, how long they've burned, whether they cook food or just provide warmth. You know you can't run, but you also know you don't have to fight blindly. The next day, you see them, a dozen strangers, emerging like ghosts from the forest, lean, scarred, eyes sharp like flint. They carry strange clubs made of wood and bone, shields covered in hide, and bows strung tight. They don't charge. They just stand. Watching, you go to meet them. Not alone, but not with a full force either. Two beside you. No weapons raised. Your hands open. You speak your name. Offer food. Gesture to the sky. You say, without words, we are many. We are strong. But we don't want war. Their leader, older, hunched, with eyes like an eagle's, says nothing. But he sees. He measures. Then, with a nod, they turn and disappear into the forest again. But this is not peace, it's a test, and you know the test will come again. That night, you make choices. You strengthen your borders, not with fences, but with warnings, scarecrows carved from bones, fire pits placed strategically to cast shadows, decoy shelters meant to confuse. You even train your dogs differently, not to bark, but to circle, to confuse, to guide intruders away without alerting the whole camp. Still, the tension thickens like sap. A week passes. Then another, until one night, you hear the cry, a short, sharp alarm call from the watch. You rise, grab your torch and spear, and head toward the edge. There, a trap has been sprung. One of the strangers lies writhing in the net, a young one, barely more than a boy. His leg is broken, but his eyes are wide with fury. You could kill him. But instead, you do something else. You help him, you cut the net. Bind his leg. Feed him. Speak gently, and in the morning, you leave him at the border with food and a mark carved into the bark of a tree. Peace can still be chosen. Days later, something unexpected happens. The boy returns, not alone, but with the same elder from before. This time, they bring gifts, dried fish, obsidian blades, herbs you've never smelled before. The elder speaks only one word, trade. And in that moment, everything changes. Because now, defense becomes diplomacy. Strategy is no longer just traps and stone walls, it's language, trust, the careful offering of knowledge in exchange for safety. You agree to a narrow zone between territories where no hunting is allowed, a neutral ground. You share knowledge of the river's floods. They show you where flint is buried beneath red earth, but you never stop watching. You never forget that people can shift like the wind. That peace is a delicate skin stretched over centuries of violence. That the best defense against humans is not isolation, but understanding who they are, and how they think. You create new roles in the clan, envoys, peacekeepers, translators. Not everyone agrees. Some still want to fight. Others fear betrayal. But you hold steady. Because now, survival isn't just about meat and fire, it's about balance, about perception, and in this new world, perception is power, so you teach your people to read faces like they read animal tracks. You teach them to speak less, and listen more. You create signals using smoke and drums. You even invent a symbol, two stones crossed with a line beneath, to mean danger, but not yet war. And as the seasons turn, something remarkable happens. The once hostile tribe begins to shift. They no longer hover at your borders. They ask for lessons. They offer stories. One of your own, your daughter, marries one of theirs. And you wonder, perhaps defense was never just about holding the line, maybe it was about drawing the line together, maybe real protection comes not from fighting off the world, but from remaking it in your image. By now, you've grown older, wiser. You walk with a little more care, listen with a little more patience. And when you sit by the fire, younger ones gather around, not because they must, but because they want to understand how the world used to be before the lines were drawn, before humans learned how to live alongside one another without raising a spear first. But even as alliances form, peace never feels permanent. it's always delicate, always shifting, like a canoe balanced on rushing water. And just as your people have learned to defend against animals and other tribes, you've come to see the most unpredictable threat of all, nature. One morning, the sun doesn't rise quite as it should. A haze hangs in the sky, thick, yellow, unsettling. The birds are quiet. The air smells like burnt wood and earth. Far to the west, beyond the range of your travels, something has changed. Some say the gods are angry. Others whisper of a fire that eats forests. But you, being older now, know better. You've seen the signs in tree rings, in the patterns of the stars, in the erratic movements of animals. You've heard stories passed from travelers, tales of shaking ground, floods that swallowed villages, and smoke so thick it turned day to night. So, once again, the question returns, how do you protect your people now, when the enemy has no face? You begin by reading the land. You gather with the elders and hunters and foragers, those who've spent their lives watching the earth breathe. You trace the water's path, mark which trees bear fruit late, and identify high ground where no flood has ever reached. You build new shelters, not just stronger, but smarter, angled against wind, dug partially into hillsides, shaded from sudden heat. Then comes the decision no one wants to make: migration. It's not easy. You've lived in this place since before your hair turned silver. The stones hold your stories. The caves still echo with songs. But you know the rhythm of survival, and it tells you this land is changing. The rivers are too warm. The herds no longer pass through. Insects carry unfamiliar bites, so you stand before your people and say what must be said: it is time to move. Some weep. Others protest. A few are angry. But most trust you, because you've led them through wolves and war, and still, they are alive. Still, they are here. You do not abandon your home overnight. The migration takes weeks. You travel in groups, one to scout, another to carry, another to guard. You leave markers along the path, stones painted red, branches tied in excess, simple symbols anyone in your clan can follow. You pass through new lands, some friendly, others watchful. You trade. You offer help. And when another tribe tries to block your path, demanding food and women in exchange for safe passage, you answer with something sharper than arrows: information. You show them how the ground will crack near the valley. You explain the river's rise and how their children will drown if they stay too long. You offer them something rarer than gold, a map of tomorrow, and it works, because defense, by now, has become more than walls and spears. It's strategy, it's foresight. It's knowing what others don't know yet. You finally settle on a plateau beside a winding river. The land is fertile. Game is plentiful. The sky is clear. You build your camp with lessons etched deep from your past: sightlines toward the forest, underground food caches, elevated paths to avoid flooding. And around the edge, not a fence, but a ring of planted trees, chosen for their thorns and dense leaves. A living wall that will grow stronger with time. Your people adapt fast. Children are taught not just how to throw a spear, but how to read cloud shapes, bird migrations, and even the taste of the wind. A sweet wind means flowers. A bitter one, fire far away. You teach them what your years have taught you, that survival is not about strength alone, it's about pattern, adaptation, cooperation, and so, your clan thrives. You even send scouts back to the old land, now distant in memory. They return with news: the forest is thinner. The streams have dried. But carved into a rock near your old cave is a mark left by another tribe, a spiral within a circle, a symbol you once taught them. It means, we remembered. The next season, your people begin crafting something new: stories etched in stone. Carvings that tell of the wild animals, the first shelters, the fire traps, the rival tribes, the migration, and the time the earth itself turned against you. These stories are placed along your new territory like a path of memory, not just for you, but for those who come next, because someday, your bones will rest in this soil, and your people will face challenges you've never dreamed of, maybe fire from the sky, or water that refuses to fall. But if they can read the signs you left behind, if they can understand that true protection is built from knowledge, not fear, then you will have given them the greatest defense of all, wisdom, and that, in the end, is the legacy you leave behind. Not a wall, not a weapon, but a way forward. The seasons pass, and as you sit watching the younger ones dance beneath the stars, it occurs to you that life has come full circle. Once, you were the child listening to stories of survival and struggle. Now, you are the storyteller, the keeper of a memory forged in the fire of ancient trials. You realize then that the true strength of your people has never been just in their arms or their weapons, but in their ability to learn, teach, and adapt. But nature is not yet done testing you. One early spring morning, as the snow melts into the river, a trembling passes beneath your feet. Subtle at first, like the growl of a distant bear, but then stronger. The trees sway. Birds scatter. The river churns, the earth quakes, not violently, but enough to remind you that the land itself has a pulse. And like any living thing, it shifts. You and your people regroup. No lives are lost, but a few huts lean at odd angles. It could have been worse. Much worse. And you know that this was only a warning. In the coming days, the land offers further omens, strange patterns in the bark of trees, frogs fleeing ponds, even bees abandoning hives. The wise ones in your group, those who spend days observing nature, begin murmuring about imbalance. You recognize it too, something has changed, but this time, you do not wait for nature to strike. Instead, you prepare, you organize a small team to chart the fault lines. Marking areas where the ground split. They use string and pebbles, basic tools, but they discover something profound, that the land seems to shift along predictable lines. You don't understand the full science behind it, of course, but you grasp the pattern, and that is enough. Your people begin building differently. Huts no longer stand on stone platforms, but on flexible wood frames that sway when the ground trembles. Storage pits are dug farther from trees, to prevent falling trunks from smashing them. And your shelters, once made purely from mud and timber, now include woven grasses and bendable poles that move like reeds in the wind. This is not the way your ancestors built, but it is better, because with each challenge, your people evolve, and now, as the tribe grows in number and confidence, they begin venturing farther than ever before. They return with tales of distant lands, of towering cliffs by the sea, of open plains that stretch to the horizon, of caverns so deep the echoes never return. But these tales come with warnings too, creatures unlike any you've known, climates that kill slowly, other tribes who wear armor made of bone. You see their stories not as threats, but as opportunities. Every tribe that's different has learned something valuable. Maybe they know how to preserve meat without smoke. Maybe they've developed methods to scare predators without weapons. Or maybe, just maybe, they too have faced the trembling ground and figured out their own way to stand firm. And so, you send out your people, not to conquer, but to learn. You form alliances, not of blood, but of knowledge. Soon, your camp is no longer a cluster of simple huts, but a center of exchange. Travelers come with baskets of spices, unfamiliar seeds, new instruments that make sharper sounds, stronger bows, and stories of their own gods. Some stay. Some go. But all who visit carry your ways with them, just as your people carry theirs in return. In this quiet revolution, you realize something extraordinary. Defense is no longer a reaction to danger, it is now a preparation for the unknown, and preparation becomes culture. Your people start holding seasonal councils, not only to discuss food and weather but to simulate what could go wrong. What if a flood cuts off the North Trail? What if the hunt fails for 5 moons? What if disease strikes the young? They imagine disasters and assign solutions, backup food caches, rotating shelters, herbal remedies. This isn't fear. It's resilience, and so, even when a great sickness finally arrives, a fever that spreads faster than words, you are not helpless. You already have quarantine huts, you already know which plants reduce fever, you already know how to protect the water source from contamination. It is still hard, some are lost, but your people endure, faster, smarter, more ready than they ever could have been without generations of learning and preparing. Then, one night, as you gaze into the fire, your youngest grandchild climbs into your lap. Her eyes are wide, her curiosity endless. She asks the same question you once asked long ago: how did we survive the wild animals? You smile, because it's no longer just about animals. Or rival tribes. Or shaking earth. It's about a story that began when your ancestors first lit a fire in the dark and said, "We will not be afraid." And so you tell her, not just the facts, but the feelings. The fear, yes. But also the triumph. The discoveries. The courage to look at danger and not run, but think. Work together. Change. You tell her that survival is not something you do once and then forget, it is something you practice, every day, for all your life, and she listens the way you once did, as the fire flickers, as the stars will overhead, and in her eyes, you see the same thing your ancestors once saw in you, hope, because if you've learned anything from all these years, it's this: no matter how wild the world becomes, as long as you pass on your story, your people will find a way. And they will always, always survive. The child stirs in your lap, lulled by your story but wide awake with wonder. And in that moment, you understand, she is the next guardian of all this knowledge. Not just the facts of survival, but the feeling of it, the heartbeat that drives a people to endure, to adapt, to grow. You carry her outside the hut, the firelight warming your back, and point toward the night sky. Do you see that line of stars? You whisper. She nods. Long ago, your ancestors followed those stars to find food, shelter, safety. You point to a different cluster, and those? They watched over the first ones who dared to leave the forest and cross the Great Plains. The sky becomes your scroll, and the stars, your script. You realize, in the oldest way possible, that the world around you has always been your greatest teacher. And now, your people are starting to write back, because things have changed. Your people are no longer just surviving. They're engineering. Not in the way future ages might define it, but in spirit. Every part of your daily life is now shaped by deliberate thought. Where you once feared the wild, you now plan around it. You build walkways above swampy ground, so no one sinks or loses a boot to the muck. You carve drainage paths so rain doesn't flood your homes. You make traps not just to catch animals, but to observe how they move and learn from their behaviors. One child even invents a sling mechanism, a curved stick that helps launch small stones farther than the arm alone ever could. With it, hunters can now strike birds from the sky or ward off predators from a safe distance. It's primitive, yes, but it's genius. And it spreads through the camp like wildfire, taught and retaught, refined and celebrated. These are not random changes, they are conscious choices born from reflection, and reflection becomes tradition. Stories no longer end at what happened. They end with what was learned. We watched the wolves for days, says a young hunter around the fire one night. They circle, tire their prey, then move in as one. We tried the same pattern on the last deer herd, and it worked. Another speaks up, the red berries near the river, don't eat them. We tested them on a dead fish, and even the birds stayed away. Trial and error become your scripture, risk, your teacher, and the camp itself evolves to reflect that growth. Instead of a single ring of huts, your people now build in zones, one for food storage, another for crafting, another for sleeping. Each is separated by cleared walkways and low stone markers to guide at night. This reduces contamination, fire risk, and confusion when danger strikes. Even the children begin to carry simple tools, a stone blade, a coil of cord, a whistle carved from bone to signal trouble. Play becomes training. They mimic the adults, setting up tiny shelters, tracing animal tracks in the mud, practicing escape routes. At first, it's just a game, but then a storm rolls in, the sky darkens mid-afternoon. The wind howls. Rain lashes the land sideways. Trees bend. One even snaps, but no one panics. Even the children know where to go. The storm passes. A few damages, but no deaths, because everyone knew their role. Everyone had practiced. It wasn't luck. It was legacy, and as the seasons shift again, your people begin to turn their gaze outward, not just to survive, but to connect. They venture out, not just to learn or gather, but to share. A neighboring tribe arrives one day, weary, tired, wounded from a bear attack. Your people don't just offer shelter. They teach, they demonstrate fire-starting techniques that resist wind, they share cooking pits that can keep food warm for hours underground, they even reveal how to shape traps that only catch large animals, leaving the young and breeding stock untouched. These visitors stay for weeks. And when they leave, they carry more than just food or gifts. They carry systems, and systems become civilization. You notice it in the little things. How disputes are resolved faster now, because people know they'll be heard. How food is distributed more fairly. How even the injured find purpose, not as burdens, but as mentors, watchers, or storytellers. Even in defense, your people grow wiser. Rather than build tall fences, they now use natural deterrents, thorn bushes, muddy moats, angled spikes made from fallen trees. Not only are these harder for predators to overcome, but they blend into the land, keeping your camp from drawing unwanted attention. A new rhythm settles in, a harmony between caution and confidence. Your people do not seek conflict. But they no longer fear it either, and as age tugs gently at your shoulders and knees, you find yourself watching more than doing. Listening more than leading. Yet in that stillness, you feel no regret, because the camp no longer depends on you alone. It never really did, but now, it thrives without needing you at the center. That is your greatest success. And so one night, when the stars burn bright and the air smells of pine and possibility, you leave the fire early. You walk down the path past the new grain store, past the children's games, past the singing stone that marks where the council gathers, and you sit beneath the oldest tree, its roots woven with memories of storms and sun and stories whispered by 1,000 nights. You close your eyes and breathe, and in that moment, you understand, you were never just surviving, you were building a future. One day, that future will speak your name, not as a warrior or chief, but as something far rarer, a protector who taught others to protect themselves. And that is how your people will endure, not just by surviving, but by becoming the kind of people who teach the world how to survive. You awaken before the sun, stirred not by fear or hunger, but by habit, the rhythm of a life lived close to the earth. The stars are just beginning to dim in the pre-dawn sky, and the camp is silent, save for the gentle snuffling of sleeping dogs and the sigh of wind through the trees. You rise slowly. Your joints protest, but your heart is light. Today is not just another day. Today, something changes. As you make your way through the hushed camp, you pass the now familiar sights, the stone hearth still warm from last night's fire, the water jars set neatly in a row, the weaving frames where children are learning to braid reeds into mats. A young boy sees you and grins sleepily. Raising a hand in greeting, you return the gesture. You've seen this place, this people, transform from scattered bands to a resilient society. It wasn't just tools or shelters that changed things. It was the birth of roles, rituals, and responsibility, and now, a new chapter begins. At the far edge of the camp, a group is gathering around something large and unfamiliar, a structure made of stone and packed clay, shaped like a tall cone with a narrow opening at the top. Smoke curls faintly from the chimney. A young woman steps forward and places a flat disc of crushed grain on a heated stone inside the chamber. The others watch closely. She waits, and then, aroma, warm, toasty. Earthy, the flatbread is done. There are murmurs of delight. You smile quietly to yourself. It's not the first bread ever made. That likely happened long ago, in many places. But this is the first oven your people have built. And with it comes something far more powerful than cooked food, time. The oven bakes multiple breads at once, while people tend to other tasks. It's a small innovation, but it changes everything. Now, energy can be saved, food preserved longer, and gatherings centered around shared meals rather than frantic survival. And that changes relationships. With less urgency, people begin to listen more. Laugh more. Plan. You watch a group of youths sketching on the ground with charcoal sticks. They aren't doodling, they're mapping animal trails, berry groves, water holes. They argue gently about scale and direction. One draws a crooked tree as a landmark. Another marks a sun symbol to show east. You realize, with a start, they are creating the first maps, and in doing so, they change how knowledge is passed, not just through memory or story, but through symbol. That's when the elder beside you leans in. We should mark time, he says quietly. The seasons. The floods. The births. He's right. And so begins your people's earliest calendar, a circle of carved stones, one for each moon, placed upright in a ring. In the center, a notch marks the sunrise on the longest day. Over time, your people learn to track cycles, when to plant, when to move, when to expect the rains or the return of the herds. The world is no longer a mystery to be feared, it is a pattern to be understood. You feel your chest tighten with emotion. So much of your early life was spent reacting, to storms, to hunger, to danger. Now, you are anticipating, guiding, teaching, and others are teaching too. A woman blind in one eye trains children in knot tying. An elder who can no longer walk teaches chants that signal directions across long distances. A boy who lost a hand now carves intricate bone needles with his remaining one, faster than anyone else in camp. No one is discarded, because everyone has something to offer, even the ones who once would have been left behind, even the ones like you. You catch your reflection in the water later that day, lined face, graying hair, eyes that have seen too much and still burn with fire. You remember a time when every day was a gamble. When a snapped twig in the night could mean death. When fire was a miracle, when food ran out, when people didn't make it. And now, look, there are babies being rocked in hammocks strung between trees. There are shared jokes, communal songs, and painted walls telling stories in red and black and ochre. There is ceremony now, gratitude now. You don't just survive each day. You celebrate it. That night, as the fire crackles and the moon rises, your people gather for the telling of the long story, the one you began so long ago, the one that others now continue. A young girl with bright eyes and a steady voice steps forward. She's never seen a lion, never run from a flood, never gone to sleep unsure if the fire would last till morning, and yet she speaks of those things with reverence, with truth. Because you told her, and now, she tells others, and this, more than any weapon, trap, or wall, this is what keeps your people safe: memory, meaning, story. As her voice rises and the stars gather above, you feel something inside you shift. Not an ending. Not even a passing, just a quiet transformation. You no longer need to stand guard, because your story is being carried forward, and it will be told long after you're gone. The fire has burned low, and the coals glow red beneath the ash. Around you, the gathering has become still. Some drift into sleep, others sit quietly, heads leaning on shoulders, their breath slow and peaceful. The girl has finished her story. Her final words linger in the air, echoing not in sound, but in memory. You watch her settle beside her siblings, pulling a woven blanket over their legs. You look up. The sky, vast and ancient, is scattered with stars, those same stars you once used to guide your way across the plains. Once, they were strange and nameless. Now, they are marked, known, part of the stories etched into the minds of your people. That star rising in the east. You named it the Fire Child. It always returns with the spring floods. That cluster near the horizon. The lost deer, it disappears each autumn, as the real deer vanish into the deeper forest. These stories, these stars, they aren't just decorations. They are maps. Memories. Warnings. They hold the knowledge of generations, wrapped in myth, passed on like gifts, and this is the true power your people have found, not in fire, or stone, or spear, but in the ability to remember, and the courage to share. You step away from the hearth. The chill of night brushes your face. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots once, then again. You walk, slow and steady, past the rings of sleeping families, past the clay ovens, the storage baskets, the lines of drying meat and woven reeds. You are headed for the grove. There, at the edge of your camp, stands a tree, old and wide, its branches thick with leaves that whisper in the wind. You helped plant it seasons ago, marking the moment when your people first declared, "We will stay." You kneel, pressing a palm to the earth. This land, once feared for its unknowns, is now home, because here, you've built more than walls. You've built trust. The kind that says, I will watch while you sleep. The kind that promises, even if I'm gone, you will be protected. The kind that builds legacy. You remember your youth, how you would wake at the slightest rustle, how you never let your back face open woods, how you once ran from fire, water, beast. Now, children sleep unafraid, because you taught them what to fear, and what not to. You gave them the tools to thrive. You look at your hands. They are weathered and worn, scarred by years of labor and survival. But they are strong still. Capable. And not yet finished, because even now, there is more to give, more to teach. You return to camp at first light. A young boy is stirring the coals, preparing for the morning fire. He looks up, surprised to see you awake before him. You grin, ruffling his hair. Lesson 1, you say, always greet the fire like an old friend. He laughs, and you sit beside him, showing him how to build the flame slow and steady, letting the air move through the sticks like breath. It catches. Burns. Glows. People begin to rise, one by one. Someone sings a soft chant as they grind grain. Children stretch in the sun. 2 young hunters check their spears, preparing for a short trek. A group of elders sits together near the oven, speaking in low voices about the coming rains, the phase of the moon, the signs in the trees. All of it flows, all of it works. You are no longer just reacting to the world, you are shaping it, and in doing so, you have become part of something greater than fear or instinct. You have become part of a culture, a system built on cooperation, language, ritual, memory, and dreams. From the first time you tied a vine across a trail to catch a predator, from the moment you lit a spark in the dark and held it like treasure, from your first night huddled in a cave, too scared to sleep, to now, seated by a fire you didn't have to start, watching a people you helped raise. You realize, you have made the wild your ally, and in return, it has given you space to grow. You turn once more toward the path at the edge of camp. You know that beyond the trees lies more world, new lands, new stories, new dangers. Others will walk those paths in time, and they will carry your lessons with them, because survival was never just about hiding or fighting. It was about learning, about looking danger in the eye and asking, what can you teach me? And now, your people know the answer. They know how to survive the cold, the dark, the flood, the beast. They know how to stay warm, stay fed, stay safe. But most of all, they know how to remember, and how to pass it on. And as the morning light washes over the camp, you feel a warmth that has nothing to do with fire. It is the warmth of continuity, of knowing your story will not end with you. It will be carried, in hands, in words, in songs, in stars. And long after you are gone, someone will sit beside a fire, and say, let me tell you how we survived. And the story will begin again.